Hey everybody, it's GoblinX, and welcome back to some more Magic Arena. We've got a few weeks of flashback drafts leading up to the launch of Modern Horizons 3, and we're starting them off today with a premiere draft of Theros Beyond Death. Without further ado, let's hop back into this format for our Pack 1, Pick 1. We've got a pretty excellent uncommon here, Elspeth's Nightmare. Like many sagas, this can be a 2 or an even 3 for 1 if all of these abilities end up being impactful for you, and it's pretty easy to get the first 2 abilities on this saga to put in a lot of work. You get to destroy a creature an opponent controls with power 2 or less, then you get to rip out your opponent's best non-creature non-land from their hand, and there are plenty of matchups where even the third ability on this saga can be relevant, because Theros Beyond Death is a format about the Underworld of Greek mythos, at least Magic's version of that, so there are plenty of graveyard abilities and mechanics, primarily the escape mechanic where you can keep recasting stuff from your graveyard by exiling other cards from grave, so even the third chapter on this saga can be super relevant, so I think the card is definitely the best card in that pack, and it's one of the best uncommons in the entire set. For pick 2, this pack has a really weird color balance to it. Super heavy on blue. As for powerful spells, disregarding the colors here, it's pretty light, honestly. Cetessan Training is fine, because it replaces itself when you cast it with that enter the battlefield effect, and there are plenty of enchantment synergies in this format. There are cards that will trigger whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, like the Triton Wave Rider here. There's also cards that specifically care about auras, like Cetessan Training is, so that shows off some of the other mechanics of the set. It's still pretty mediocre, though. I wouldn't want to take it this early. Same with, like, Omen of the Dead. It's fine graveyard recursion, but it's not super exciting. There's an okay escape card draw spell that shows off that graveyard mechanic of escape. Super weak pack all around, honestly. I think we just take, like, Commanding Presence here as a pretty beefy aura. This gives your creature +2/+2 first strike, which already makes it pretty hard to beat during combat. That's a very large first striking threat, and anytime you manage to get through and damage your opponent, you start establishing an army of little 1/1 soldiers. So pretty fine card in a format that has great ways to buff auras, like make them cheaper, or there's ways to like search for an aura from your deck. So auras are inherently just a little bit stronger in this format than most. For pick 3, we can take a very solid removal spell to go with our pack 1, pick 1. We've got an Elspeth's Nightmare, now we can take a Final Death. Again, exiling things is nice in a format with good graveyard mechanics, so I like Final Death quite a bit. Any other great options? Starlit Mantle always plays perfectly fine. It's like a little bit more expensive version of Snakeskin Veil, a card you'll probably have seen in a lot of different formats, but these uncommons are all kind of narrow, not the greatest. Just a bit overcosted or too specific. Yeah, pretty weak packs so far, honestly. Our pack 1, pick 1 definitely had the strongest card we've seen so far by a lot with Elspeth's Nightmare. Pick 4, we've got a little bit more to talk about here, luckily, at least a few cards that are actually pretty decent. I'm going to go with the Farika's Spawn here, this uncommon. It's a 4-mana 3/4, but once it's in your graveyard, if you can escape it later in the game, when you reanimate it from the grave, it's going to be a 5/6, and it's going to make your opponent sacrifice a creature when it enters the battlefield. So it's a really nice threat for playing out a long game and just grinding things out, getting your opponent farther and farther behind. The other cards that are nice here are Funeral Rites. I really like abilities to just randomly self-mill while giving you value. This is already a 2-for-1 draw spell without the self-mill attached, and the self-mill helps the escape mechanic a lot, so I think Funeral Rites is pretty great. Final Flare also plays pretty well in the format. With the Omens, these are the enchantments that just hit the board and immediately do something, then they just sit around waiting to get sacrificed later, basically. So Final Flare is pretty decent removal. That was a pretty good pack all around. Pick 5, we've got another Final Death just to stick really heavy on black. I think I'm going to do that, although there's a couple other places to go. Again, really love draw spells that also fill your grave a little bit, and Thirst for Meaning is great at doing that. Also, just being an instant or sorcery means you're putting at least one card in your grave for escape. And then there's also Destiny Spinner here as the strongest card regardless of color. It's a little bit better than Final Death, not a ton though. But it's a super solid green card, so we could start pushing towards that direction, but I think if we see Final Death pick 5, we can just stick to black for now, stay heavy on the color. Pick 6 mediocre cards all around. There's an okay counterspell out of blue and an okay creature out of green. I'm going to take the green creature here. It's got a pretty nice escape ability, even if it is quite low toughness. It makes up for that by just constantly coming back from your grave later in the game. Pick 7, now we have a Skola Grove Dancer. Nice little self-mill engine to fuel all of your escape cards when you run out of stuff to do. Perfectly fine card. Wolf Willow Haven is fine as well, but there's not like a ton of stuff you really need to ramp into. I think the format's slow enough you don't need to like try to hyperspeed your ramp with the Wolf Willow Haven. Just gonna go for the Grove Dancer. Pick 8. Okay, I really like Hateful Eidolon. Currently, it doesn't really do anything, but if we can pick up some cards like Citizen Training, then when our creatures are randomly dying, we're also drawing cards off of them. And more importantly with the Eidolon, this synergizes great with a lot of the removal spells in the format, because a lot of removal in this set happens to be aura-based removal, like a 2-mana removal spell that's like 2-mana aura gives something -3/-3, so if you cast that with that Hateful Eidolon on board, you draw a card the second you cast it and kill their card. But there's also like green auras that you put on your own creature to fight an opposing creature. So you kill their creature, and then when your card dies later, you'll draw a card off the Eidolon. A lot of great ways to use this card. Pick 9. This was our opening pack, and it's pretty much empty now. There's not a lot to talk about. Lantern is like filler main deckable, because you can get rid of an escape card, but I think I'd rather just take another random filler creature on color. Pick 10, I'm perfectly happy with a Citizen Training here to go with our Hateful Eidolon for synergies. And again, because it draws you a card when you cast it, it just immediately replaces itself and makes it always just a fine filler card. Pick 11, Gift of Strength, I guess. Random trick, just to cut green. Yeah, I'm not very excited about any of the red cards. None of those are good enough to really speculate towards. Return to Nature is actually main deckable in this set. As we've seen already, there's tons of enchantments. Not only are there sagas and auras and graveyard cards that you can exile with Return to Nature, but there's plenty of enchantment creatures as well, like the Skola Grove Dancer that we have here, or the Nyxborn Marauder. So Return to Nature actually main deckable. Not a super exciting main deck, but main deckable nonetheless. For pack 2, pick 1, we can take a Final Death or a Soul Reaper of Mogis. Either of these are just guaranteed to make the cut. Or we take something in a secondary color, either Heliod's Pilgrim, trying to be black-white auras, or Nessian Wanderer, just for a very solid green-black value play. You can keep drawing lands off of this as you're playing enchantments. I don't think any of our green cards are exciting. That's just the color we happen to get plenty of filler in. So I don't necessarily feel tied to green like I feel tied to black here, despite the quantity of green cards. So I kind of want to maybe speculate on Heroes of the Revel or Heliod's Pilgrim. I'm going to go for Heliod's Pilgrim. I think this card is excellent for many of the same reasons that I like Hateful Eidolon. And that's that this set not only has offensive auras that you put on your own creatures, but it has removal spell auras as well. So Pilgrim can end up being this really flexible card, finding a removal spell or a way to buff your board depending on what you need. So I like that quite a bit. There's a Rise to Glory getting passed to us as well. Again, really good for a black-white auras deck. If we can get Mire's Grasp and stuff, this will be excellent. We already have Heliod's Pilgrim and Commanding Presence towards black-white auras as well. Kind of like that idea. Final Death is certainly the much safer pick. Or again, if we stuck to green, we would just have a couple Nessian Wanderers here, which is perfectly fine. But I kind of like going hard on black-white here. Do some aura nonsense. Here's an Aspect of Lamprey. Pretty solid in this archetype, because with Heliod's Pilgrim, this is going to make that even more flexible. Now we can tutor for a removal spell, or a way to buff one of our cards, or a discard spell off of the Aspect. Not a super efficient discard spell or anything, but I do really like having the first copy here. The alternatives are all fine. Decent flyer, decent little bit of graveyard recursion. This doesn't put you up a card, though, since you're putting the card back on top of your deck. You do skip your next draw step to put that enchantment in your hand, so it's not great, but it's fine filler. I think I just take the Aspect with Heliod's Pilgrim already. Ooh, pick 4 Mire's Grasp. Another Rise to Glory is pretty sweet, but hopefully we can just wheel the first copy, because I don't think I can take Rise to Glory over Mire's Grasp when I currently have 0 aura-based removal spells. Getting at least 1 aura that's actually a removal spell is a pretty big deal, not only with the Heliod's Pilgrim, but also with the Hateful Eidolon, as well as the Rise to Glory. Because Mire's Grasp is one of the few auras that we just know, if we've drawn a Mire's Grasp, it's going to be sitting in our graveyard. It's going to be giving us extra Rise to Glory value. So there's so many good synergies for Mire's Grasp. We have to take it over a second Rise to Glory, as fun as that would be. If it pans out, it's not going to pan out without the Mire's Grasp. Pick 5, Dreadful Apathy, gives us our second aura-based removal spell. Really gets us going here. Quite happy with that. Start cutting all this green. This is not a format with basically any good fixing. There's some pretty mediocre fixing in the set if you really need to splash, but I don't generally recommend it. So I am going to take Transcendent Envoy here over Siona, which is a little sad. I think if the fixing in the format were just a bit better, Siona would be a really exciting splash. But the only dual lands in the set are at rare, meaning you're basically never going to get an on-color dual. You can't ever rely on that. There's one really mediocre common land that mana fixes, and there's like one like Traveler's Amulet kind of artifact you can sack to get whatever basic you need. Very happy with another Dreadful Apathy, pick 7. But yeah, for the most part, really don't recommend splashing much in this format. Pick 8, Traveler's Amulets, if we do want to splash, but I didn't take the Siona, so that's not going to be a thing. We'll just take the Sentinel's Eyes for aura synergies. This one's a really nice one too, because it's also flexible with that escapability. You're basically always able to have access to this later in the game. It's hard not to have just a couple cards randomly sitting in your grave. The difference between like an Escape 2 and an Escape 4 is pretty massive. This feels like it's almost always just an extra card sitting in your hand when you need it. Pick 10. This is all booty. I mean, we take one of the random creatures, I guess. Trying to sort my creatures versus non-creatures here, because we definitely need a lot more creatures in this deck. But I want to see where we're really missing out on some. Mostly more 2-drop creatures, it looks like, but yeah, a little more top end could work too. Well, we did get the mediocre common fixing that exists in this format. We have the Unknown Shores, and we had access to the Traveler's Amulet, so not taking Siona doesn't look like it's worked out super well, because we would have had the mediocre fixing to go with her. But these are literally the only 2 common pieces of fixing that I would consider playable, and they're just like pretty medium playables. I don't really like Alter at all, so it happens. We hit some variance there, some good variance towards fixing after I already decided not to splash. So it is what it is. Pack 3, pick 1. Another Transcendent Envoy for another 2-drop seems decent, especially in this deck that has, you know, double Dreadful Apathy, Mire's Grasp. It's got the big commanding presence as well, and the Envoy curves very great into that. Turn 2 Envoy means turn 3 we get to slap a commanding presence onto it, and they just have to deal with this Envoy, or they're going to have a really bad time. Favorite of Iroas is fun too. When you're playing an enchantment, it's getting double strike till end of turn. So 3 mana 2/2 that half the time has double strike is just okay. I think I'd prefer that's a great aura build around. Speaking of great aura build arounds, now we take a Mire's Grasp to go with our Rise to Glory. One thing I'm a little unhappy about at the end of pack 2 is that we didn't wheel the first copy of Rise to Glory, so somebody is competing for black-white auras here, but we're still like so locked in and in such a good position that I don't think it really matters. We're going to end up with at least 2 Mire's Grasps and 2 Dreadful Apathies. One way to tutor out an aura with Heliod's Pilgrim, an aura reanimation spell with Rise to Glory, a Hateful Eidolon to draw cards. We're in such an excellent position here, even if we're fighting over these black-white aura cards. There's no point in like trying to flip-flop over to green or something at this point. Pick 3. I don't hate Mire Triton at all. It's really nice in green-black, where you have beefy escape cards like Voracious Typhon. This is an excellent common. But even just with like a Fairy Spawn and some Graveyard Recursion with Rise to Glory, I think this card will play pretty solid. So I'm going to take the Mire Triton here. Ooh, we get another Rise to Glory anyway. Let's go. Lampet of Death's Vigil is actually a pretty excellent 2-drop. The 3 toughness means it's going to help block a lot against more aggressive decks, and then late in the game, it's not that hard to be in like a race against your opponent and just have 4 or 5 creatures sitting around, so sometimes this just like ends the game a turn early. You get your opponent down to like 5, and then you're like, okay, now I can just sack my whole board and you're dead. Plus, getting the incremental advantage of draining them for life every time they try to removal spell one of your creatures is nice. I do think this card is very good, but Rise to Glory is just very specifically excellent in this deck. Pick 5, bunch of nonsense again. We might take the Captivating Unicorn just to get a little more top end. I don't think Grim Physician's super exciting. It's fine filler, pretty much always, as is the Captivating Unicorn, but I think we're missing a little more on top end filler now. Actual finishers, after we deal with their early threats with Mire's Grasps and Apathies and stuff. Okay, here's a better top end filler card. Rage Scarred Berserker, 5/4, gives some +1/+1 indestructible till end of turn. I guess it's better when you're on the aggressive. If you're not on the aggressive, it is just a 5-mana 5/4, which isn't that exciting, but I still think it's probably better than Rumbling Sentry at the very least, or these random 3/4 drop cards. I don't actually know if this is better than Unicorn, though, come to think of it. I like Hero of the Pride here. We have a couple auras that go on our own cards. Sentinel's Eyes, Commanding Presence, and Aspect of Lamprey. And if we do that, we get a buff. Soul Reaper is pretty excellent at grinding out a longer game, though, because if you have the extra mana up and you're in a top deck war, when they draw their removal, you draw a card too. I guess I still go for Soul Reaper. Just really good activated ability on that one. It's also really excellent if we get to Commanding Presence alongside it. That'd be super nasty. All right, pick 8. I don't think we're playing any of this, but I'll take the flyer. Pick 9, we got the Favorite of Iroas to come all the way back around if we do want to try to get some double strikey swings in with that. Mogis's Favor is a card I do like. I like Mire's Grasp a lot better, because this is much more narrow, but in the right matchup, this card's excellent. If your opponent is playing 2-mana 3/1s and stuff and getting really aggressive, having this little removal spell that you can keep escaping from your grave can be completely game-ending. If you can kill 2 different cards with this thing, the game's like practically over. This thing is silly in the right matchup. The problem is, if you're in the wrong matchup, if you're just against like green-black or something, they're just never going to play a 1 toughness card, and so it sits in your hand doing nothing. So I like having 1 copy, especially when I have Heliod's Pilgrims in my deck. I do wish we had more than 1 copy of Heliod's Pilgrim. That would make this even better. But when you've got like a Heliod's Pilgrim and you're in black-white, Mogis's Favor is actually pretty dang sweet. So we are at 47 cards here. I think I mostly want to just remove some mediocre creatures. I'm fine with playing a pretty low creature count for this deck and just playing the best of the best stuff that we have. And we do have several like really filler creatures, like a 4/3 with literally no text, a 3/4 with barely any text, +0/+1 to your attacking creatures. That's pretty whatever. Rumbling Sentry, just like a scry. It's kind of whatever. I think those are all of our most filler creatures. The Favorite is still kind of filler, as is the Unicorn, the Berserker, maybe even the Pegasus. But I think these 3 are the insta-cuts. These are just maybes. I don't want to cut all of them. Oh, the Harpy as well. 1 toughness is a pretty hard sell. There's a few cards in the format that just go really wild against 1 toughness cards. So you have to have like a really good, really valuable Enter the Battlefield effect or some other really valuable ability. I don't think Scavenging Harpy quite gets there at 3 mana. It's still playable filler, but on the lower end. But something like a Discordant Piper, where even if they kill, you get an 0/1 out of it, or Mire Triton, which is like you're fueling your escape cards and gaining life when you play it in the first place. So again, even if it dies, it's also had pretty big impact. Scavenging Harpy doesn't really play that way as often, because you want to cast at turn 3, you want to get your flyer down and start attacking, and at that time, they probably don't have a good escape card in their grave anyway. It's Enter the Battlefield effect only really being relevant if you top deck it later in the game. I mean, I guess it does inherently slow down their other escape cards just by exiling their random Traveler's Amulet from grave or something, right? Because then that's 1 less card that they can exile towards reanimating something with escape, but I find the Harpy plays just a bit worse than it seems like it would. Anyways, as I was trying to say before I sidetrack myself, as I always do, 1 toughness cards have to have really nice abilities, because there's just some cards in the format that completely hose them, like Mogis' Favor here, as well as there's like a red card that's every time you cast an instant, you deal 1 to any target. That thing is just wild against 1 toughness cards. There's a few cards like that are pretty rude. So I think Scavenging Harpy can go to the insta-cut pile, and that brings me to just needing to cut 3 more cards, which looks pretty good. I do really want to leave like some chunky creatures in here to go with the Rise to Glories, make these as impactful as possible. We really want this to be like Reanimate a removal spell and like a chunky creature, like a 4 or 5 drop. So I think I would rather put Berserker Unicorn back in before the like 3 and 4 drop stuff of Favored Viroas and Sunmane Pegasus. And that might actually even get us to the point of like cutting another 2 drop over like the 4 drop Pegasus here. Got a pretty good enchantment count here for Constellation, right? A 2/2 double striker, though, is like... I don't know, even if it's always a double striker, it just trades into a 2/3. Like, if our opponent plays a Soul Reaper, we're like, well, shoot. I guess we do, because we're an Aura deck, we have Mogis' Favor, we can put this onto the Favored, and then we have a 4-power double striker. Okay, kind of hard to block a 4-power double striker, or 3-power double striker with Sentinel's Eyes. Commanding Presence is a little bit of a nombo, though. I mean, I guess 4/4 double strike is better than 4/4 first strike, but sort of losing that first strike value there since the Favored basically already is going to have it. Yeah, I mean, I guess with Sentinel's Eyes and Favor and Commanding Presence, we play around with the Favored. It does look like the enchantment count's high enough. It should pretty consistently have double strike. Maybe we cut some final deaths here, honestly. We'll still have 2 copies of Mire's Grasp, which kill most decently sized creatures. 2 copies of Dreadful Apathy, which can still kill anything, just like the final deaths can. And then 2 removal spells for hitting the really small stuff, Elspeth's Nightmare and Mogis' Favor. Still feels like a great chunk of removal. And this way, the majority of our removal, the Apathies, the Mire's Grasps, and the Favor, all synergizes with a lot of other stuff in our deck, like our double Rise to Glory, our Favored, our Eidolon, stuff like that. Whereas Final Death is just like good removal. It doesn't directly synergize with anything, really. Yeah, I can see that. Cut the double Final Death. Get 1 last cut out of here. I think I might just get the Piper out of here. It's good with our double Soul Reaper, but that's about it. The 2/1 body or the 0/1 goat body aren't anything we're going to want to throw any of our other auras onto. And really the only thing they're doing is just chumping or getting sacked to the Soul Reaper. And I think Soul Reaper's just fine by itself. Yeah, I'll just cut the Piper, and that should be a good spot to be. Let's make sure that Arena has given us a good mana base here. We're on 12 white cards, 13 black cards, so a tiny bit more black than white makes sense. What about double black spells or double white spells? We have none of either. Pretty easy mana base here. Yeah, no spells require 2 black mana, no spells require 2 white mana. Well, that's excellent. All right, 8-9 split it is, and we'll call it a deck here. All right, here's like the final deck list for today. We're on a black-white auras deck. This is an archetype that has a lot of grindy, attrition-based ways to win a long game. We have cards like Hateful Eidolon that are going to draw us a card whenever anything with an aura attached to it dies. That's going to work really well with our removal spells like the Mire's Grasps and the Mogis' Favor here. But it's also going to work great when we're putting Sentinel's Eyes and Commanding Presences, an aspect of Lampreys onto our own threats. So Eidolon is a huge card advantage engine over the course of a long game, but we also have a couple cards that are just going to 2-for-1 our opponents straight up in the end game, like a couple Rise to Glories. These are going to reanimate our best creatures and reanimate a Mire's Grasp or a Dreadful Apathy from our graveyard to be both a removal spell and a creature at the same time. So these are our ways to get ahead in cards here, but we can also curve out and try to just make some really big flyers with our auras. We've got Transcendent Envoys as well as Sunmane Pegasus, so that we can slap like Commanding Presence onto something and spit out an army of soldiers while we're doing that, or we can slap Sentinel's Eyes onto something to keep getting in while holding up blockers. And outside of that, we just have decent creatures throughout the curve, really. Mire Triton to fill our grave for our Rise to Glory, as well as our escape card, which is Farika's Spawn. I guess the Favor as well as another escape card, but Farika's Spawn, the much stronger escape card in the late game. We have Heliod's Pilgrim to tutor out whatever we need. We have auras that work as removal, auras that work as discard spells, auras that work to buff our board. So this is pretty excellent in this deck. And I think that's about it. Then we just have like a Unicorn and a Berserker to try to end the game. They're pretty filler, but they're big creatures to do some damage. And then like a Favored of Iroas, just some double striking damage to get in. So that is a look at the deck for today. It's a pretty cool one. Pretty specific to this format for sure. So I'm excited to see how it does. Without further ado, let's head into the gameplay. All right, here we are on the play with an excellent start. Hateful Eidolon into Mire's Grasp is going to be absurd in any game, as long as they don't kill the Hateful Eidolon, which I guess is pretty likely against red. They've got some cheap burn in this format. There's a 2 mana deal 2 to any target. There's a 4 mana deal 4 to any target. So I'm guessing they're going to kill the Eidolon before anything else happens, ideally? No. All right, do I just cash in the Mire's Grasp here against the Rage Hound? I think I'd rather cash in the Apathy. Well, the Apathy doesn't technically kill a creature. Yeah, but this has an escape ability to come back later. If we had Mogus's Favor in hand, that would be like the sickest, but I'll go ahead and just Mire's Grasp here, make sure Hateful Eidolon at least draws us 1 extra card this game, if nothing else. And honestly, if they don't kill the Hateful Eidolon this turn, I think I'm going to put a Commanding Presence on it, because this triggers off of its own death as well. Okay, there they go. They kill it with Omen of the Forge now. If they had that in their hand on turn 2, I think they really just should have shot the Eidolon immediately. That's what I would always do. You just want to destroy this thing before it draws anything for any reason. But that was probably their top deck this turn. Stampede Rider, hello there. Well, you know what you don't do. You don't block a big first striker very well, so let's cash in a 1/1 human here. Now black-red can kill a Soul Reaper, even if it's going to be really big here, because they can use their black removal instead of their red removal. Ew. Final Flare for exactly enough damage. Alright, kind of gross. We've got a couple Rise to Glories in here. We're going to need those at this point because our opponent has not been drawing lands, so they're on 5 spells. So we're kind of flooded for the way this game is going currently. Opponent is on all spells and we're on all lands. So we're looking for big 2-for-1 late game draws like the double Rise to Glory ideally. We definitely want to make sure to spend the extra mana to fully exile the Stampede Rider in their end step. That way our Dreadful Apathy is sitting in our graveyard, so we have that as an option as well for our Rise to Glories. Alright, Aureate of Mountain's Blaze is pretty great if this ends up being a top deck war. Because if they flood out at all, they can discard their extra lands to that to draw. Doesn't look likely right now. They still have 4 spells to cast right now. Ooh, that's a pretty solid draw. 2 mana instants to destroy something in this format off double black. Not at common at least. There might be an uncommon I'm forgetting. But if they can kill the Envoy in response to this aspect, that's going to be rough. They just completely counter it. Ooh, alright, well. They just had another escape card, so they like barely discarded there. Oh my god, I hit the all attack button instead of just a single attack. Goodbye, soldier. Just a perk of playing digital magic there. Honestly, I didn't mean to send a 1/1 into the 1/3. I was just clicking the wrong button. Just trying to speed through my 1 life gain attack there. I forgot to go click there, then there, and not just click there. Alright, here comes the Rage Hound. It has escaped as a 4/2. Sunmane Pegasus is not bad. here. Because the lifelink is pretty hard to race. And the vigilance means that the Aureate of Mountain's Blaze is just going to keep getting blocked by it if they don't spend some more removal. Now, they are decently likely to have more removal, though, because we know their hand is 2 spells and then a top deck here. And if they had removal, I don't think they'd spend it on a 1-2. Maybe a 1-2 lifelinker. You know, maybe they would have killed it by now, but I don't think it'd be unreasonable for them to just have kept removal in case we hit something better, and there it is, Hateful End. That gives them a scry as well. They've got some really, really good cards for winning a top deck war here. They get to scry after the removal, put that extra land on the bottom. They've got the Aureate, so if they do hit extra lands, they just discard them. And the Omen of the Dead to get the Graveyard Recursion here. Cast this Underworld Ragehound, and it is full on a top deck war race, but they've got a scry 2 off this Omen of the Dead as well. Alright, 9-19, let's go. I can trade this Envoy into the Ragehound. However, they have 1 card in grave. They'll have 2 after they sack the Omen of the Dead. One thing to note in this format, they're in a good position to not sack this in their upkeep because they just have Aureate if they draw something bad. But when you have an Omen on the board, you can sacrifice this during your upkeep. So sometimes it can be worth it. I don't know if I take this trade. 7 damage. It's going to be 3 cards in grave after the Omen. That's enough cards to escape it next turn. If I trade, they sack the Omen, scry 2, next turn, unearth it anyway. Yeah, we actually just don't block. Anyways, if you have an Omen, Arena's not going to stop in your upkeep for it. So you have to manually click on your upkeep. So that's definitely important to keep in mind. Uh-oh. They actually have a 4-power creature on board for that. So that's a 3-4 trample. We can play a unicorn. We can block that. Take 7. 8, I guess. Ooh, our blocks are just not good with these envoys, though. 9 life. If I... 4, 5, 6. If I hit them for 2 here, they're at 7. They're still not dead next turn, even if I tapped all their blockers with this unicorn. I gotta pray for something like that, though. I gotta just, like, top deck into lethal. So let's just go maximum damage here. I think Rise to Glory would do it, if we top deck one of those. We can get Eidolon, Maya's Grasp, and draw another card. And that would kill 2 blockers, because we Maya's Grasp a blocker, and we also tap down a blocker with the Constellation trigger on the Unicorn. They top deck Amogus' Favor here. +2/-1 would be pretty good. Nope. Oh yeah, these have to attacks. That explains that. Alright. Somewhat of a moment of truth draw here. That's not bad at all. Shuts off 2 blockers and forces a chump. So we kill the Stampede Rider, tap the Aureate, and they have to chump with the other one? I guess it doesn't force a chump. We put them to 1, not 0. We'd put them to 1, they'd crack back for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which isn't lethal. This still seems worth it. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on the crackback. Yeah, get in. There's the scry, so they know what they're drawing before they make their decision. If they find a burn spell, we're pretty dead. But again, I think we're needing to just try to win this race here. Because if I just hold back, I end up having to block a 4/2 Rage Hound with both of my flyers or my unicorn, and then we have no shot at getting any damage through here. We're entirely just playing to top decking a Rise of Glory or something. This way, like, we could top deck something good, or our opponent could just not draw anything. And in either position, we're good. Okay, they're down to... we're both down to 5. They play the Rage Hound to have a blocker. Any enchantment kills them off Captivating Unicorn's ability, but that's a Plains. So... dang. That's unfortunate. So I just hit them for 1 with the lifelinker. I guess, yeah. I hit them for 1 with the lifelinker because that leaves me open to blocking the Oread with a 4/4 and one of the 4/2s with a 1/1 and surviving. This way I could block and survive without losing the unicorn. If they don't draw into something here. Which is somewhat unlikely because they have the Oread. But like, as long as they only draw into like a creature or something instead of like a burn spell. Yeah. So they're still dead to top deck enchantment, maybe. They could have a creature off of the couple draws they've had here. Let's see. It'd still be dead to top deck. Okay, that is a creature. It's actually a bomb. So that's multiple creatures, and then they gain 2 scry 2 on the 3rd turn. Come on, top deck. Nope. Well, what can you do? We're just dead now, right? Technically not, but I mean, there's no draws that win the game from here. Just kind of flooded a little in the end. Lots of lethal draws. Block, block. Take 3, gain 1. Yeah, that's just dead. I mean, they could play it safe, and then we technically wouldn't be dead. Like if they only attacked with the Rage Hounds, but we would still have no board state from there. Alright. We are 0-1, heading into game 2. Alright. Well, Pilgrim, Rise to Glory, these were both cards that were on the list of lethal top decks at the end of last game. But that's okay. They can show up at the start of this game and we'll just use them here, and they'll still be very, very good. Ooh, 1 mana Mire's Grasp is already set up. Got the hook up here. We're playing against blue-black, pretty controlling deck. Lots of counter spells and cheap removal in the format, so I don't love the fact that they can just see that I've got a big aura coming. But we've got the Rise to Glory, as long as they don't like exile counter one of these. What's going to be best here? Honestly, it might be making them just discard cards here instead of trying to get the army going. I don't know. It's definitely Aspect or Presence. I'm going to go for the Presence, though. I'll go for the damage. Build myself an army. Yes, they tapped out. Let's go. We actually get to Presence it up. And 1 mana Mire's Grasp in the same turn. This deck is sick. Let's go. Mire's Grasp on a 1/2 usually doesn't look that great, but the way that the Eidolon works is once they hit 7 mana, they draw 3 cards off of it. So I'm just preventing a future 3-for-1 there and cashing in some extra damage while I'm at it. Atris, Oracle of Half-Truths, incredible card. That's an immediate 3-for-1. They get to draw whatever pile I give them that has 2 cards in it, so... What is the weakest 2-card pile we can give them? Probably Grey Merchant and Swamp, because we have Elspeth's Nightmare, so they spend 5 mana on this and we just kill it with 3 mana. So I think this is the weakest 2-card pile for them, so we give them that. Doesn't really matter what's face up and face down. The way you generally play Atris is you just take the 2-card pile. Alright, I mean, this works too. one card pile also just dies to Elspeth's Nightmare. It's actually really good for us that they took that, come to think of it, because I can just Mogis's Favor the Devourer. So never mind. I could Rise to Glory, but I have no creatures in grave, so I'm not going to do that. Elspeth's Nightmare doesn't do anything, so we just send in... I think we send in the whole team, because even if I end up casting a Mogis's Favor to finish off an Atris here, I'll still have that engraved to escape later. So like, even if they see it coming, it's still going to be really good against their 2-1. They can't exactly just, like, save this from dying to Mogis's Favor, even if they know we have it. I mean, they could just cast different creatures instead of that. They can play around it to a certain extent, but not in a way where the Devourer is not going to end up dying. Ooh, wow. All right, they've got the Thassa to go with the Atris. This is a balmy deck. Good lord. Here I am with my 0 rares being like, uh-oh. I'm just going to do the 2-card thing again to them, and maybe they'll take the 2 this time. They took the 2 this time. Let's go. All right. Well, so far, Atris has been on our side, really. I would really like to kill Atris when they have a Thassa on board, which I can only do with Mogis's Favor post-combat, so we just try to get that to happen again. Which means we're letting Devourer actually trade into one of our creatures, but our creatures are all 1/1s and 1/2s, so it's not a bad trade anyway. Okay, we don't get to favor the Atris, sadly. So we just favor the Devourer. I mean, I could Rise to Glory the Atris. You know what? I'm just going to hold on to the favor. Let's Nightmare the Devourer. And this will give us the Duress next turn, where we get to look at their hand and make them discard a card. I maybe shouldn't have played this land in case they have the discard 2, but if they spend 4 mana on a discard 2, they're just going to die to our board. I guess they do have enough mana to do the discard 2 spell and something for 3. Shimmerwing Chimera. Beginning of your upkeep, return an enchantment. Up to 1 enchantment you control to its owner's hand, so it's really good with the omens that have entered the battlefield effects. This is a cool deck from our opponent, and an explosive one. Double Islander Brine Giant, I think. We really don't want them to have the Brine Giant. If I show them the Brine Giant, they're just going to take it, right? They just take it if I do this, but if I do this, there's the tiniest chance in the world. Yeah, I don't think there's any way to get them to not have the Brine Giant off that one. Okay, let's look at their hand, and if they don't have instant speed removal for Envoy, we will just kill them. It is lands, and Brine Giant. Alright. R.I.P. R.I.P. opponent. Five damage in the sky. Oh wait, Thassa can tap something, but they're 1 mana off from that, right? Oh no, they've got Alter to gain 1, because they have a god on board, but I've got a bunch of 1/1s, so we get the 1 extra damage. Alright. Cool. They're at 6, but they take 8. Okay, scary matchup, but luckily a solid amount of flood from our opponent. I mean, I guess like 3 or 4 of those lands were ones that they drew off of Atris, so that was us giving them lands too. We are 1-1 now, heading into game 3. Well, we've got the nasty hand here. We've got the Hateful Eidolon to start things off. We've got all of its best friends as well. We have a Favor and a Mire's Grasp, and we've got Favored Viroas with its best friend, Favor. We put a favor on our own favored, and it's like a huge flavor win as well as being a 4-power double striker. Sadly, as you do in this format, our opponent immediately killed the Eidolon. Ooh, they gave us a really good favorite target though. I think I drop favored and then we cast favor next turn. I swear I'm not trying to be as confusing as I have been. That's just how I shortcut these cards. This is favored and this is favor. I'll just say the full names from now on. Alright, so we cast our favorite of Iroas first, so that way when we do cast our Mogus's favor, we get the double strike off of it as well. I guess the awkward part about this, though, is that the favor doesn't fit well into our curve at all, because we still want to play a Pegasus here, which single-handedly outraces the Harpy anyway. Then we're still going to want to play a Captivating Unicorn next turn, because that's going to provide a lot of extra damage. Like, we're just not in a position to actually want to favor yet. Maybe now that they're holding the Harpy up as a blocker, but I think if they combat trick Pegasus, sure. I just don't want them to combat trick the favored. Hope for 2. Okay, this might be a final death here. 5 mana, exile a creature. That'd be fine. I mean, I spend 5 mana on Unicorn, they spend 5 mana to kill it. Fair trade. It is not the 5 mana instant speed removal. It is in fact nothing. It is in fact the floodiest of flood, maybe? Well, now I can even just Rage Scarred Berserker. Get a indestructible 2 toughness creature, and that lets my whole board attack without risk of dying on board. Cool, they're down to 11. And they've got the Omen of the Dead to bring back the Harpy. Actually, did they mill anything else? Nope, it's just the Harpy. Yeah, this looks like just flood over there, but they've got the Scry 2 to dig out of any more flood. Both to the bottom. The Harpy's back. If they just tap out for a bunch of blockers, it's really easy to kill them with this hand. It's also really easy to kill them if they don't. They're at 11, 5, 9. This is so much more than lethal, just killing the Harpy. I could also just, like, buff my own favored and tap the Harpy with Unicorn, but perfectly happy with the insta-kill here. Okay. Just gonna get their last scry just for good measure. But they're incredibly dead on board. Yeah, there's the concession from our opponent. So it was just like an awkward hand from our opponent. A lot of mana. But also Graveyard Recursion in the opener with just like a 3 mana 2/1. They had 2 copies of the Omen of the Dead. Traveler's Amulet was basically another land for them. Just not the kind of cards you want in an opener. Awkward stuff for our opponent there. And we get somewhat of a free win here at 2-1 now. Head into game 4. Alright, here we are for game 4. 4 land opener's a little high, but the start's pretty good. Triton into Favorite of Iroas into Transcendent Envoy to trigger the Constellation. Chainweb Arachne is the start from our opponent. That is a really good card. A very sad start for us. Because our little death-touching Triton doesn't do anything about that. I'm pretty happy to have milled a couple lands here. If we didn't mill ourselves, we would have been on 7 mana this early. We milled double planes. Hey, Rise to Glory, you're decent. We usually would be really good with the self-mill from Mire Triton, but land is not something you can reanimate to Rise to Glory. Oh no. Yeah, our opponent has the big green escape cards. So the Arachneer comes back as a 4/5 reach that also shoots a flyer when it hits the board. The Typhon comes back as a 7/7. So we got issues here. We got issues for sure. We really want like our exile removal in this matchup. We want to find the Dreadful Apathies. I could Sentinel's Eye as a favored, and it's big enough to trade into the Typhon at that point. And if they don't trade into it, we hit for 6. I could alternatively just drop the flyer, because Favorite is still big enough to trade into Typhon here, I guess. And then we can try to just make the Envoy big enough to attack past their reach creature. Like, they'll definitely chump with it because it can come back as a 4/5 and just shoot the Envoy when it hits the board, but for now, we'd be able to find damage. Yeah, this is a matchup. These big escape creatures that we wish we had the final deaths still just in the main deck. At least they're doing a pretty bad job filling their graveyards. It'll be a while before they escape anything. Both of these escape 4, so they have to mill 4 of their cards. They don't have to mill 4 cards, but they have to, you know, cast a bunch of instants or sorceries or chump with a bunch of creatures. Anything to fill that graveyard, really. Once they do, though, they get paid off pretty well with like a 3-for-1. Threnody Singer is like one of my least favorite cards in this format. Such an annoying little duelist thing. Like, Fairy Duelist was pretty good back in, what was it, Guilds of Ravnica or whatever? 2 mana, 1/2, Flash Flyer gives something -2/-0. Adding another toughness to it, making it a 1/3 flyer, makes that thing just huge. And obviously, because it gives -X based on the devotion, sometimes that thing just hits the board and shuts off even like 4 power creatures later in the game. Well, this is a matchup we need to draw removal, and we haven't even drawn our small removal. So we are about to start dying. Now is where we start taking 6 a turn. Minimum. Oh yeah, especially if they throw trample onto that thing. That ain't it. I don't think I'm supposed to just sack a creature, because these are still holding off the rest of the board. I'm just gonna die to a single Nyxborn Colossus. Nope, I'm not. Unless they have the counter an enchantment spell here, then I will. Because the counter an enchantment spell in this format is a an exile counterspell. Let's counter it and exile it instead of putting it in the grave. Deny the Divine is what it is. Nessian Hornbeetle. Okay, well, let's exile this pre-combat then, so they don't have a power 4 or greater creature on board to get the +1/+1 counter onto that. Cool, cool, cool. 8 mana means I can Rise to Glory and still have Soul Reaper mana up. I would get Mire Triton back on board. And Apathy the Hornbeetle, I guess? I could Apathy the Arachneer. But they only have 2 cards in grave still. Tempted to just wait on the Rise to Glory because we're still fine. Like, we're just staring at each other right now. It's a lot safer to just cast the Rise to Glory, though. But this is better if the game does end up just stalling out from here. So we can make sure we get even more value. Getting rid of something that actually does matter quite a bit. Okay, this is really suspicious. This can't be good. Maybe it's just fueling the graveyard for escape, which is fine, because then we just Apathy the escaped card. Let's see. Well, looks like what it is. Fuel the grave to get the Typhon back. They need 1 more card in grave still to do that. So they have to wait another turn. Heliod's Pilgrim, let's go. Okay, 2 cards in their hand. I feel like if they had removal, they probably would have used it to clear the path a little bit by now. So I am going to grab... Well, it is tempting to make them discard their hand, but that also fills the grave for their escape stuff. So I'm just going to try to get this commanding presence really going here. Because 4/5 flying Vigilant First Strike is insane on this board. Even if it wasn't making 1/1s. Oh, it's another Threnody Singer? Okay, cool. That's fine. No 1/1 this turn, but we still have the best threat on board. Why did it damage twice? Oh, because that was the first strike damage to that, and then that's damage to this. Okay, Rage Scarred Berserker. Interesting. Does that matter at all here? No, a 5-power Envoy attacks just as well as a 4-power one. They're not going to kill it here or anything. And I guess I'm not casting Rise to Glory this turn anyway, so I might as well. I'm just not attacking with any of these. I could give the Soul Reaper Indestructible Descended in as well, but I want to hold up pretty much all my blockers. So Arachneer shoots for 4 when it comes back, and it only shoots a flyer, so it should be fine at this point. And then we can just kill it with Rise to Glory. Which is why I'm cool with throwing it into their graveyard. If it had 1 more power, that would be a big problem. Big enough to kill the Envoy on the Resurrect. Basically, they escape something here, I Rise to Glory, and we try to just win off this Envoy. I think that's where we are at. If they do have removal for Envoy, I'll be pretty sad. Then we just sack it, draw a card, and start attacking with a 5/4. They are going to go for the Arachneer here. Not enough damage to kill the Envoy. And we're good, we're chilling. Okay. Glory time. Let's go Triton and Apathy. Oh, alright, well, that's a bummer. It's actually so bad. Last card is the counter spell. So Envoy doesn't do anything now. Because they can triple block with Arachneer and both Singers. Yeah, it's a bummer. 1 card engraved, we still send Berserker in. Oh, we get to kill the Horn Beetle? I'll take it. Actually, if they don't find a way to deal with a flyer, if I kill the Singer, then Envoy can start attacking in. We first strike the Singer before the Arachneer. The problem is Horn Beetle. Horn Beetle becomes a problem super, super fast. I think I have to just kill the Horn Beetle. Sadly. Pass turn. Would crack the Pilgrim. Then I'm getting dangerously close to dead removal and stuff. I mean, I guess it's literally 1 chump block. Not blocking profitably at all. The only ground attacker they have is a 4/5. So, oh my god, Elspeth's Nightmare is actually great. Aspect is nice too. Let's Aspect first. Pray that their 1 card in hand is an instant speed removal, and then we get rid of their 1 card in hand. If it's anything other than instant speed removal, we're cool. Oh. So, I mean, they're just going to discard whatever they draw now. So they want to scry into a way to where they draw a bad card and then... Well, that's not that much different than this resolving, but it is really annoying that that was in the top 2. Because now we don't get lifelink anymore, which matters. But the big thing that mattered there was that we make sure they don't have instant speed interaction to get a good block against the Envoy, so we're fine. We're fine with that outcome. Still kind of wild, though. The draw into the counterspell. Well, I guess it is true we don't have enough power to even actually get damage in here. Okay, the lifelink did matter a lot. Man. That way we get profit every time we attack. Elspeth's Nightmare is still going to be good to exile their grave, but they're really just like one removal spell from starting to kill us here, so we got to find something else. Still have some good cards. Sunmane Pegasus is a good one, but no matter what we hit, we need to hit a way to deal with the Arachneer first. Okay, kill the Soul Reaper. Okay, so they did hit removal, but it doesn't kill the Envoy. And this is part of what makes Soul Reaper so good, is that it can sack itself too. It's another Envoy. Okay. I mean, this thing's a 4/7 now, so we need an Apathy to deal with it. Or honestly, Captivating Unicorn works. Because at any turn we top deck an enchantment, we can get in. Alright, let's exile all their nonsense. Rise to Glory copy number 2 obviously goes hard here. Because we have... If we top deck Rise to Glory, that's the best draw in the deck. Because that's an Apathy plus. Apathy plus Heliod's Pilgrim probably is the best card to recur at this point. Even better than Berserker. We got some live draws. I think we've got like probably 5 out of the 15 that are really good. And then there's some more random creatures like Eidolon or something that would be okay. The Arachneer has 5 power now, and that's a big deal. And Swamp is big bad. But, yeah, I mean, we have like 5 really good draws. We also have like 5 really bad draws. I think there's like 5 lands left. So, what can you do? Mire's Grasp, not quite the really good draw, but it's enough if they have nothing in hand. That's a 4 toughness Arachneer that dies to the first strike, so they have to counter this thing if they've got more counter spells. There it is. Alright. Back to the top deck war. Hey, that is super good. Super, super good. I guess the only aura really left in my deck is like Sentinel's Eyes at this point. I've got a second Apathy. Yeah, I'm just going to pick up Pilgrim. And I'm just going to get double Apathy. Boom. That feels pretty big. I probably should have sent this one in as well, even if it does just bounce off. Did we win the top deck war now? I think maybe so. It's been a long game. We're getting down to milling time. That not going to work how they want it to. And that is game. We are now 2-1? It's been long. It's been some long games of Magic. So I think it's just 2-1. I don't think this is game 4 yet. Well, it will be. We'll be heading into game 4. Let's just find out. Let's see the numbers, because My memory's poop. Oh, it is 3-1. Let's go. Hey, at least a 50-50 run for the return to Theros Beyond Death. You love to see it. Let's just end the video right here, hop into our next draft so we can play another deck. No, we'll keep it going, see how far we can take this deck as we head into round number 5. All right, it's time to kill our opponent's father. In a video game in Minecraft. Transcendent Envoy into Aspect of Lamprey into Ferrica Spawn is a curve? It is a strange curve. I would not say it's an incredible curve or anything, but we're doing something turn 2, 3, and 4, so seems good enough to me. Our turn 3 play not being like a creature is what makes it a pretty weird curve. Uh-oh. One Ragey boy. That is a lot of damage to where it might be worth just blocking immediately, but then I don't have a play on turn 3. Ooh, I don't have a play on turn 3 if they omen the Envoy either. Yikes. Alright, big aggro from our green-red opponents. Oh no, we top-decked another Aura, and that would have been an even better play. Wow, if they didn't have the Omen here, this game would have been vastly different. We would have hit for 3 damage and made a 1-1 to trade into the Rage Hound on blocks. That would have been so insane. Yeah, Commanding Presence is so good against their deck. But we might die before we can deploy it at this rate. If they have removal for their spawn, then we're out of creatures. Almost forgot how to speak English for a second there. Removal for... I'll get there. One day I will master this language. No! Oh god, all we have are trades against 2 different creatures that escape? Well, I know what my plan is here. I don't know if it's gonna work, but I know what my plan is. And my plan... Okay, Rise to Glory is a sick draw. My plan is to hope that green-red cannot kill a really big Ferrica spawn, so we make a really big Ferrica spawn, and that gives us 2 blockers here, one of which just eats their creature without dying. Yeah, I mean, green-red is all damage-based removal. They have to deal 7 damage to this thing, and it's basically got to be non-combat damage because they are not getting anywhere near a first-striking 6-power creature. They have to chump attack with the Rage Hound because of its ability. All right. And if it's still around, we get to put lifelink on it, and that is going to be a massive stabilizer. I think we've done it, friends. I think we've done it. And now when it dies, it has so many auras attached to it that we'll just have enough cards in grave to escape it from grave and kill another one of their creatures and have a big blocker. So even if it dies, it's going to come back and help defend us again. And then after we do all that, we still have a Rise to Glory. I think we're stable. We just completely flipped this game off of some absurd auras. Let's go. Get out of here, Inigo Montoya. We are now 4-1 heading into game number 6. All right, here we are for game 6 on the play. I'm going to keep this on the play. Obviously, the fact that we're not going to play a creature till turn 5 is kind of a big deal, but I'm going to hope that 1 copy of Dreadful Apathy is enough for us to dirtle around. All right, now we're fine. There's no 1-mana instant speed removal for the Eidolon, so we can throw a Sentinel's Eyes on it, and if it dies, we draw a card off of it, and we don't really care if Sentinel's Eyes goes to our grave because we can keep recasting it. So we're really up a card if they kill this. Yeah, we're basically up a card. Because Hateful Eidolon drew us a card, made them discard Mire's Grasp, and discarding Sentinel's Eyes is almost the same as just having it in our hand. Because it's so easy to escape. It was still definitely the right play from our opponent. You just have to deal with Hateful Eidolon. It's just a position where it puts them in a bad spot where they kind of have to get 2 for 1. There's the Funeral Rites. Ooh, pretty excellent. This is going to make it so Underworld Charger's useless. Thank you, 3-4 body from Ferrica Spawn. And now we can just start life gaining here. Got a favor that they could use post-combat if I block the Charger with Spawn next turn. Could also play more threats here. I could grab my own Mogius's Favor off of this Pilgrim, which is interesting. The 1/2 body doesn't really matter. The 2/3 body off a Soul Reaper doesn't really matter. I'm just going to aspect them. I think that's fine. Just start doing the lifelink race. If we hit land 5, it would just be Slam Dunk Unicorn. But I think these creatures are insignificant enough to just gain a little life, get rid of a couple of their cards. Oh. Alright, Croxa. That's going to be an issue. We need to save Apathy for that. They need 5 other cards in grave? They have 5 other cards. Oh my god. How do we get got by the mythic escape card? Never run discard against that. And they're still going to hold off on it. They're going to Aerophant first. Alright. Thing just makes me discard 1 card, right? Yeah, I discard 1 card and then I just kill it. Okay, yeah, I mean, I'll trade for Aerophant. We've got a really good escapability of our own, as long as they don't exile our grave. Spawn ends up in grave. Cool, cool, cool. They bring out a Croxa, we Apathy the Croxa. Go from there. That will be an issue if they have a way to sacrifice it. I need 1 more mana to be able to exile it the turn I play the Apathy, ideally. But it looks like they're just holding off. They just don't even want to play around with Croxa. Yikes. Well, that explains that. Goodbye, Spawn. That's sad. I can just Pilgrim for the favor. Sure. Yeah, Pilgrim for favor seems decent here. I do have the 6 mana for Apathy plus Exile when they play Croxa, but obviously we need to wait till they do Croxa for that. So now I'm just going to start dying to Underworld Charger, sadly. At this point. So discard Soul Reaper, kill Croxa. This thing is wild. 6/6, we discard a card and lose life every time it attacks. I guess there was an argument for holding on to land 6 to discard that instead of Soul Reaper. But I really want... Okay, I'm pretty happy with my choice, because I was going to say, I really want the ability to exile this thing, so they can't just sacrifice it to a Final Flare or something like that. Or any creature that lets them sack a creature. So if I ended up discarding a land and then not top decking a land, if they had anything like the Lamphead that sacks a creature to drain your opponent for life or anything like that, that'd be super bad. Here they're forced into exiling the favor. Cool. There's a Rage Hound. And there's a little Flood. 2/3 body just doesn't matter really at all. My apologies for the squeaky chair. What's the best way to get the most mileage out of these cards here? I mean, I'm at 14 life, so I'm taking enough damage. I just can't afford to not stop some of it, so I feel like I have to Apathy the Charger. And with 6 cards in grave, I suppose I can Sentinel's Eyes. Just to be a slightly bigger blocker, but I'm pretty sure I just trade into Rage Hound anyway. I mean, no, they already have 6 more cards in grave still to immediately escape it. No, so we're not trading Pilgrim into anything. But 1/2 versus 2/3 is the exact same, it just chumps. It even chump attacks into the Rage Hound. Yeah, so I'm on just Apathy the Charger, because if I ever kill that, it's a 5/5 out of the graveyard instead of a 4/2 like the Rage Hound. And I stop just as much damage that way. We just have to top deck stuff from here. Alright, all spells from our opponent still is quite bad. Basically, our only good draws at this point are the double resurrects. I mean, Mire's Grasp is a good draw. I just mean our only draws that are sufficient to change the way this game is going is our big 2-for-1 reanimator spells. Still got both of them in the deck at least, so the odds aren't terrible. What does this even do? +1 -1 till end of turn? So I can turn it into a 0/1 and then it doesn't matter at all. If I put a Mire's Grasp on this, I've effectively killed it. Unless they have the rare land, Labyrinth of Scophos, which even then, it doesn't get to fight if it's a 0/1. So, make that useless. I mean, I guess it can still add to their escape count at least. That's something. I'm going to poke for 2, so that if I do somehow top deck straight gas and hit like double resurrection into double resurrection, I start getting a tiny bit of damage in, which could add up with really good draws. Still all spells, and it is unfortunately all lands here, so that is dead on board. We chump block a Charger, take 5. And that'll do it. Alright, here we are for game number 7. We are 4-2 right now. This is a mono-white opener, but we hit a single swamp within the first few draw steps, and we'll be incredibly happy. That turn 3 aspect on the Envoy, plus Sentinel's Eyes to put onto it. Build your own big flying vigilant lifelinker. Any lands are good draws here, because we're trying to get to 5 mana as well, and luckily we did immediately hit the swamp, so no mana issues here. There's Elysian Caryatid, so no mana issues there either. Let's start off with the Envoy, so we can get that cheap aspect going. Although I might go Triton Sentinel's Eyes next turn. Start slamming in for some damage here. Eutropia. That's concerning. If we draw any removal, I'm just going to kill that. But alas, we did not. So any enchantment they play comes with a +1/+1 counter on any creature, and it gives the creature flying till end of turn. That's pretty threatening. So, again, if we find anything to deal with that, we will deal with that. But for now, let's start setting up the nice flying vigilant threat. So now we're going to go aspect into the Unicorn. And the Triton should be decent in this matchup. They're probably playing some big green creatures, so any turn when they don't play an enchantment to give them flying, we just trade with a Death Toucher. Furious Rise. So they're trying to get a creature with power 4 or greater. If they get one, they will start drawing an extra card each turn, and now Eutropia is an even bigger target for removal. Because if it gets one more +1/+1 counter, it's going to start drawing them cards off of the Furious Rise. Unfortunately, we do not find any removal, but we can rip almost their entire hand away here. They get to keep one last card. Unfortunately, if that card is any enchantment, they make Eutropia 4/4 and then start refueling with the Furious Rise. And that's an insane enchantment. Erasta, absolute bomb, 3/5 reach, And if we cast any instants or sorceries, they get more spiders. Luckily, that's not that bomby against our deck. Still a 3/5 reach is an incredibly big deal. But we don't have a lot of instants and sorceries. I think we have 2. I think it's just the Rise to Glories. Everything else is enchantments and creatures. But we are really good at drawing lands today, sadly. So we have not found any removal to deal with either of these must-be-killed threats. And now the Furious Rise just takes off. And this is the removal spell waiting room from this turn onward. Fashionably late Mire's Grasp. That is literally 1 turn away from killing Eutropia. Eutropia's got 4 toughness now, so it doesn't matter. I can make Eutropia 1/1 to stop them from drawing the cards still, I guess. I think that's what we have to do, right? Because if I use this on Arasta to try to start getting in with the Envoy, they can just kill the Envoy with their burn spell anyway. So, I mean, Envoy's already dead. Wow. Alright. They've got the Snakeskin Veil Hexproof trick to keep drawing the cards. Now they have 2 separate 4-power creatures. And they get to go right back to drawing 2 cards a turn. Shimu and Chimera can pick up the Starlit Mantle, so I can never kill any of their cards. And we're like 1 turn from just dead at this point. Already down to 11. And we just miss. Now they're going to have a Starlit Starlit Mantle in their hand, so even if I somehow don't die off of their next attack, there are literally no outs, because any removal spell just gets countered. And just some bad beats for our losses today. I don't really think there's anything that we could change choice-wise in any losses. Things just did not line up well, so 4-3 is looking to be the final record for this deck. Still a pretty solid, respectable record for the return to Theros Beyond Death. Positive win rate. We're going to be leaving with just as many gems as we entered with. But I'm still a little disappointed in the end. We clumped up a lot of losses in a row at the very end here. And I think this deck's a little better than a 4-3 on average. All 3 of our losses were pretty bad beats. Good amount of lands and stuff like that. So we go to like 1 life here. We have 0 blocks that are any good. Every block we make is a chump wherever we do it. They still have a Horn Beetle. Find 1 blocker, nowhere near enough at 3 life. Alright, 4-3 it is. Alright, so here's a final look at the deck. We went 4-3 in the end. That's enough to break even on gems and head into another draft for free, pretty much. So solid spot to be. I would have liked to do a little better. I think this deck was pretty sweet. Pretty much exactly what Black-White Auras wants to be doing. Ideally, what we could have done... Well, I mean, we didn't see any more Heliod's Pilgrims, but common and uncommon-wise, things that could be a little better about this deck would be a couple more Heliod's Pilgrims. I think these are super premium to the archetype. The flexibility of grabbing, again, Commanding Presence or Aspect to be a great way to establish a giant board state when they're on the offensive, or to make your opponent discard some cards if they're low on cards in hand is pretty nice, and just stacking those alongside, of course, the very obvious use of Heliod's Pilgrim of just grabbing removal is pretty premium. So I think Heliod's Pilgrim is like one of the best commons for this deck. Would have liked to pick up some more of those. Outside of that, really, I think the creature base isn't horrific here. That's really the one thing that would improve the deck quite a bit, because with the commanding presence, especially getting it consistently off of Pilgrim, we can turn almost anything into a game-ending threat. We had that Ferricus spawn completely turn around that one game. We had multiple games where just a suited-up Envoy was the big threat. And, you know, some games we just ended things with big 4/4s and 5/4s, so I think that part was fine. We've obviously got solid aura-based removal. We've got the excellent top-end Rise to Glory as a 2-for-1 finisher. I think overall the deck's pretty good. It doesn't have any bombs or anything. Most of our losses, though, were just due to some rough variance, just a bit too much lands, and our draws not lining up too much, and that can happen to pretty much any deck. So 4-3, still a respectable run, and honestly, I think probably the lower end of what this deck can do on average. Just had some bad beats today, and still, again, a solid win rate in the end, for 1,400 gems and 3 packs as the final prize out for our return to Theros Beyond Death. But that is going to end today's video. As always, I'd like to thank my patrons and YouTube members for their support, as well as you for watching the video. If you enjoyed this video and are interested in seeing more, you can always like, comment, and subscribe to tell the YouTube algorithm to send you some more in your recommended feed. If you're interested in catching me live, you can check out the Twitch channel in the link in the description below, and if you'd like to support the channel directly, you can check out the Patreon link in the description below. But other than that, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for another draft of Theros Beyond Death.